Here we are, all are. Welcome to the noon Friday edition of Winning the Writing Game. And I think we've had some pretty good weeks. I just have a feeling this is going to be a sparkling week of laughter and a lot of really great insight, because we have two of the leading ladies of crime in conversation. I'm going to introduce Sam Blake first and then tell you about her guest today. Sam Blake, who you'll recognise when she comes on the screen. Her debut novel, Little Bones, was #1 in Ireland for 4 weeks and remained in the top 10 for another 4, and was shortlisted for the Irish Crime Novel of the Year. And of course, that launched the best-selling Cat Connolly trilogy. Moving away from police procedurals, Sam is keeping a focus on strong female characters, writing psychological thrillers for Corvus Books. The first one, Keep Your Eyes on Me, went straight to #1 in January 2020. And The Dark Room is destined, I'm sure, for best-selling status in January 2021. And she's already signed for some more books to keep her busy until, I think, 2023. So joining Sam on the virtual writing game sofa today is multi-million copy selling Angela Marsons. Her #1 best-selling Detective Kim Stone series has sold a staggering 4 million copies worldwide, and it's been translated into 28 languages. In October 2014, we'll hear about this. I think Angela was a little bit disillusioned with the publishing world. She'd been facing years of rejection from publishers, and I'm sorry to say also from agents, when she signed with Bookouture. And I think you may remember we had Catherine Taussig from Bookouture on an earlier interview, so that's worth watching again. They signed her for 4 crime novels in this new detective series. It was Bookouture's very first crime fiction acquisition, and just 4 months later, Bookouture and Angela Marsons were celebrating their first Kindle #1 with Silent Scream. Death Score, which is the 13th and latest book in the Detective Kim Stone series, publishes this month, I think, and that rocketed straight into the Kindle UK #1 spot on pre-orders alone. She's just signed a 12-book deal with Bookouture for some more books, and I'm going to sit back now and looking forward to seeing what Sam and Angela have to talk about, and I will feed your questions back at the end. Over to you, ladies.
Thank you so much, Simon. Let me bring Angela in. We'll all be through on screen for 1 second. She's coming in now. There.
Hi.
How are you? Let me just I'm going to pop Simon out. Thanks so much. There we go. There we go. Right. Now, my goodness me, 4 million books, Angela Marsons. That's just nuts, isn't it?
It is, and it doesn't matter how quickly you say it, it still actually doesn't.
Like, oh my God. So take us back to that. Simon mentioned there that you've been rejected by the various agents, publishing houses. You were basically sick to the back teeth of the whole business at that point. Take us back to then and how you ended up signing with Bookouture. Tell me that story.
Yeah, it had been, 25 years of rejection. With mainstream publishers, with agents. I mean, I sent lots of books to the same agents, lots of different books to different agents, and this was back in the old days when it wasn't by email. You went to the post office with stamped addressed envelopes, and you posted them, and and you waited for them all to come back. And some days I actually felt sorry for my postman, who was dropping 5 off at a time, and
they came back. Oh dear.
Back, but I always felt that you've got to be in it to win it. So once every rejection was back, I just went off with another 20, because while they were out there, there was hope. When everyone was back and had said no, there was no hope. So it'd be off again with another 20 in the post box, and and I mean, it was a difficult time, but I think I learned a lot throughout that time. I just kept writing, just kept trying new things, and but I think one thing was I was writing characters and storylines that I thought publishers and agents would like. I never thought I'd be able to write a crime novel. And I
That's
think
really interesting. So, literally, you were doing what you thought the industry wanted
yes,
at that point.
yes.
Yeah.
Because the dream for me was always to write for a living. I think it was in 2012 I secured a top London agent, and after 2 very, very, very miserable years, I was dropped by this agent. But an editor I worked with there, Keshni Naidu, she never forgot the Kimstone books. And because I was with an agent, I'd taken voluntary redundancy after 19 years working as a security manager at a shopping centre to try to give the writing thing a go. And the money had run out. We were selling our possessions. I'd just been dropped by the agent. I couldn't get a job. We were lending money from family. I was applying. I couldn't even. I was turned down for a job in an Amazon fulfillment centre, which is ironic now, that Amazon.
Sending out the books.
But I could not get a job anywhere, and it was at the point where I finally secured a job working 12-hour night shifts that I heard from Keshne, who had also since left the agency, and she told me that she'd never forgotten the Kim Stone books and that she'd submitted Silent Scream to a young and dynamic publisher called Bookouture. And at the time, I was like, oh, okay. I can't hope. I can't even, all I'd been focused on was getting a full-time job so that we didn't lose our house.
Yeah,
too much to hope for. So I was less than enthusiastic. It was, I daren't hope. And I think it was a few days later, Claire Board, who is now my publisher, she contacted me to say, I'm reading Silent Scream. And I was looking for the but in the email, and she said, have you got any other ideas? And I couldn't type that email back to her fast enough. I was like, have I got ideas? You want to hear
25 years of ideas.
I was all over the place typing the response, and I think it was about 4 or 5 days later I was offered a 4-book deal. But the beauty of it was that Keshne was also employed by Bookouture as my editor. And as an editor would also be my editor. So the lady who started it all worked with me on the first 8 books.
I love that. I think, go on.
Yeah, she went off to start Hera Books with, a colleague, and they're doing fabulously. I still refer to her as my fairy godmother. And now I work with Claire, who again was there from the very beginning and was reading the books. And, she gave me that lifeline of, maybe there is some hope, after all. And
I love that. I think there's a couple of things coming out of that. The first thing is that just keep writing. That was the best advice I was ever given back in the 100 years ago. You just kept going.
Yeah.
And you kept going, and you really created your own opportunity there, because yes, you had that little bit of luck. I think we talk about that a lot, is that sometimes you need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and that everybody needs just that little bit of luck. And that little bit of luck for you was it landing on her desk. But if you hadn't kept moving and sending it out, it would never have got there. I mean, that's just wonderful.
I mean, there were times when, it was hard to keep going. I think the harder rejections were the ones where the books had been given great consideration. The ones that just came back, no, were probably easier to deal with because, it's like, okay, fine. But the ones that came back with good words, suggestions, but still no, made you think you got closer to the goal.
Yeah.
It was further to drop.
But
Julie, my partner, she's been involved from the very beginning. For over 30 years we've been together, and she's been there the whole time, and she just would not let me give up, even on the worst days, because as she would say, it's not what you do, it's who you are. And so she would say, I know, she was very devious. She would say, go back to the table, don't write anything, don't even pick up a pencil, but just go back to your writing space and just sit there. And she knew full well that, probably 10 minutes in, and I couldn't help but pick up a pencil,
That's wonderful.
Back to just writing again. And I think that's the thing that, you've never got to forget the reason you do it in the first place.
Yeah.
I started writing things down because I love to put words together. I love to try and get emotion, onto the page. And and you've got to stick with that. You know, publishing and rejections, it's all so hard to take, but you have to come back to why you started it in the first place. What was that love, the you know, passion was in you to start writing things down in the first place?
It's wonderful you had that support, because I think having a champion behind you who tells you you can do it makes a huge difference. I mean, and that really, you do keep going. But you're so right, because it's what you love, and you, I think, as a writer, when you're off in that world, you're just a happier, nicer person. You know, when you can't write,
you know,
you get a bit, I don't know if you get a bit grumpy.
No, she said for years, I like you much better when you're writing.
So she had an objective in mind there, I think, as well as the success and the faith in you. That's always good to hear. In fact, actually, your story there, I used to work in shopping centres 2 years ago, so I'm all behind you there. I used to work in shopping centre marketing, but that whole thing of that sounds so familiar, because I don't know if you've read, I'm sure you have read Stephen King's On Writing, but he was in that exact same situation, that absolutely desperate, got to the desperate point, and then things started to change. So it's really interesting to hear that actually he's not the only one, that you powered through. So I'm just going to put Silent Scream onto the screen here so people can see it, and then the link will go out for anybody. So this is the first book. So this is the first Kim Stone book, and this is the one that crossed Keshni's desk. What was it that took you, do you think, from those books that were being constantly rejected to one that started to interest an editor? What was it about Kim Stone, do you think, that made the difference?
I think what it is I had a rebellion, and I thought I couldn't write a crime novel, and I couldn't write in my local area because nobody would find it interesting. I thought I'd got to set books, you know, in big cities that I didn't know. And this character had been in my head for years, but you know, I didn't even like her, so I didn't want to let her out, because I thought, well, if I don't like her, you know, a reader's not going to like her. And so when I wrote Silent Scream, it was like, okay, I'm gonna just write the book that's in my head with the character, set in a place that I know. It's going to be crime, and if it dies at 30,000 words, at least I can say I gave it a try. And a month later, 90,000 words, nobody was more surprised than me that it was an actual book. And I was like, how did that happen? You know, I couldn't work it out. And I think that I enjoyed every single minute of it. It didn't feel like a chore. It didn't feel like I was doing any kind of work at all. I was just enjoying the organic process of it, because I didn't plan it and I didn't really know where parts of it were going. But for me, that works. I love things to grow organically. And Silent Scream certainly did that. And in writing Silent Scream, I got to know that voice in my head better and understand her good points and not just her annoying points. I'd only heard the annoying points in my head for years, but you know, I got to know her as a more, you know, fully rounded character. And it's like, actually, you're not so bad. You know, maybe a few people will like you. You know, if I'm lucky, 50 people might like you, so we'll give you a go. And
that's all we need. That's all you need. That's all you need to get started.
So I think it was kind of like, maybe there was more of an authenticity, or it was just a character. But again, I mean, Silent Scream went out to just about every publisher and was rejected by them all. It wasn't until Booker took a chance with Silent Scream, but it had been rejected by everybody. So
this is the thing, though, you only need one person, don't you? That's the thing about the perseverance and the subjectivity of this business, is that you just need one person to recognise something, to see something in that, and to be able to take forward. What I loved when we were speaking earlier, we had a great giggle the other day when we were having a chat, was the whole thing about Kim coming to you and you saying that you didn't like the character and you didn't particularly want to put on page. Then you thought, damn, I'm just going to give it a go. Because what you didn't like about her was the fact that she was very sort of spiky, and she's a bit, you know, she's just tough, isn't she? I'm going to get you to tell them all about her in a second. But I love that. I made the hair stand up on the back of my neck when you were telling me that, because she came to you from the ether, from wherever she came from, but she came to you in the same way that she meets people on the page, because that is really how people get, you know, the characters in the book meet her, and that's how she is. And it's only when you get to know her a bit later that you discover that she's got depth. I'm going to take it off the screen so I can see you properly. But so tell us about her and her spikiness and what type of character she is, because she's very special.
Because the background of her came from her present voice, if you know what I mean. I hear her voice so clearly. It was them. Well, what could have happened in her past to make her this person. So her past kind of came from a present, if you know what I mean, because she was just so clear. But it wasn't until I started to write her properly that I understood the passion for, justice and for fighting for the underdog. And, I just thought, I got to the point where it was like, I actually don't want everybody to like her. I don't want her to be that likable, because there are people out there that aren't that likable, but you would still want them in your corner. And, there's a particular character of Carol O'Connell's, Mallory, and she's borderline sociopath. And she's really not a very nice character, but she just has one or two redeeming qualities. And I find her fascinating to read about. And reading books like that, and Val McDermid's Tony Hill series, I think kind of gave me the
commission
to write a character that was maybe a little bit off, or not as likable, or was a little bit different, and just see how it went. So, I always say I don't expect everybody to like her, but I hope that most people will feel the same way as me, and at least understand where that passion for justice comes from, and that she does try and do the right things most of the time.
She does. Well, I just love the fact that you were saying that you when she came to you, she was spiky and she's abrasive and she's all of those things. You didn't really like her either, and that's really that's exactly how she'd be if you met her for the first 5-10 minutes, wouldn't it? I mean, in real life. So that to me is incredible.
I just wouldn't want to meet her.
So she's brilliant because she's into bikes, isn't she? And she just isn't. I mean, did that come as well when you started to get to know her and trying to think about her background and her motivation and what made her the way she is? Is that what you found?
Yeah, I think it was because I got the impression that that she wouldn't be somebody that sat still in a downtime, and also that even while not working, she probably would want to keep her mind active with a puzzle, because of her love of riding motorbikes. And I also wanted to tie it back to something in her past, memories that she was fond of, because we've got this 3-year gap. That wasn't total misery when she was 10 to 13 and she was with some fabulous foster parents that actually, had she not spent those 3 years with, she would have been a very different character. And they were the turning point for her. And so she remembers her time with them very, very fondly. And, her foster father was, did the same thing and restored motorbikes. And, people who know the character know that she absolutely cannot cook. Every cooking appliance hates her, and she's her foster mother was an absolutely fabulous cook, and she constantly feels like she's letting Erica down by not being able to replicate that, but she does try. And I think so for me, her restoring motorbike, starting something from scratch, and building the bike up it just seemed a natural thing for her to spend her time doing when she wasn't at work.
And there's something wonderfully restorative and creative about that process, and you can see how that clicks into her soul. What I love is that you know her so well. It's like and we're talking about you meeting her and you finding out her background literally as if she's a real person. And when we were talking, I was saying Joseph O'Connor has this thing that he talks about characters floating around an ether above your head and looking to connect with writers. And when they find the right writer, then the magic happens. And that really feels like what's happened here. That she is a real person up there.
That really stayed in my mind after you said it the other day when we were having a chat. And it really does feel like that. I'd never given that thought before, but that really stayed with me.
Literally, like she was waiting for you, and you just the minute you opened up and you said, right, damn the rest of the world, I'm just going to write what I want to write.
Yeah.
And you let her in, and she'd been there on the doorstep, banging on the door all that time, and then you let her in, and then and here we are. And so I can see, because when you write a series, I've written a series of 3 police procedurals. You've written 13. Because Deadly Cry, which I'm going to stick on the screen, is the 13th, isn't it? And you've more books to come. But knowing her like that, I think you need to have that level of depth and that level of understanding of a character to be able to continue those storylines, don't you?
Yeah. I think with what I do, if I'm not sure how she's going to react in a situation, then I put her in it. and see what happens, you know, because some things I don't know how she's going to react to, certain, you know, witnesses or victims, or, you know, things that might remind her of the past, or they're too close to home. You know, we've got, you know, a particular sociopath who is Kim's nemesis, and I absolutely love, she's turned up in 2 books, and I absolutely love writing about her. It's great to write from a sociopath point of view. You can do anything with them, you know. So when, you know, there are books where they meet, I absolutely love the interaction between the two, because although they hate each other, there is also a mutual fascination, because, you know, the sociopath psychologist wants to get to know Kim, and Kim doesn't want to, but she's still intrigued by, you know, this psychologist. So, you know, I love to write things like that, and say, put her in positions where, you know, I don't know how she's going to act, and just see what she does.
That's fascinating. And and you said earlier that you don't plot and plan, so you're not plotting and planning any of these books, but yet you have this cast and her, and who you just know intimately. So I say to people, sometimes writing a series is a bit like going to the pub, and all your friends are there waiting, and it's applying the plot, if you like, to see what's going to happen. Do you feel like that when you start each book?
I do. It's like, I always feel when I start each book, I find myself wondering what she's been up to while I've been away. You know, because I often feel that really I'm just writing her life story, and, you know, I'm being allowed to do that. She's letting me sort of like follow her around.
Yeah.
So when I start, you know, book 14, it's like, okay, what have you been up to while I've been gone, you know? And I do picture her waiting for me to sort of like open the door back up and sort of like walk around, following her, you know, with me notepad. What are you doing for a living, you know? So
brilliant. Yeah.
It's very, I know some people don't want to write a long running series, and I completely get that, because a lot of the fun in writing is making up new characters. I also really enjoy the continuity of, you know, continuing with knowing how the character's going to act, and, you know, growing the ones I've got, because can always bring new characters in. I love to do that as well. But a lot of people, you know, when they review the books, they say, you know, it's like putting on a pair of comfy slippers, you know, because they just slide right back in.
Yeah.
It's like they've never been away, you know. And I love that, because that's how it feels for me as well. As soon as I pick the pencil up, you know, normally start with a Kim and Bryant scene, and, you know, as soon as I pick the pencil up, it's like, here we go again, you know.
Off you go. And so when you're plotting, do you have an idea of what's going to happen in the story? Do you start off with a core plot point? I'm just trying to get into the process. Do you just have, basically, if I'd explain to us how you do this magic, how this magic happens on the page? So obviously you know her so well, and you're sitting down to write. But in terms of the plot, do you know where you're going? Do you have like an end scene or a middle scene or a? Oh my goodness me!
Sometimes I do it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I know who the killer's going to be. Sometimes I realise halfway through, or sometimes it changes halfway through. I start off with a subject that I want to write about, because, you know, Killing Mine was about cults, and I'd wanted to write something about cults for a very long time. The psychology, I wanted to there's a lot of psychology in the cult subject, but I wanted to concentrate on the psychology of joining, and how people, you know, absolutely normal, level-headed people were manipulated into joining. And so I'll start off with the research, and I was researching that, and often as I'm researching, I'll start to get ideas for storylines. So I've got a research book to one side and a notepad to the other side, and as I'm researching storylines and characters are coming, and, you know, and every time this happens, so by the time I finish the research, which normally takes a couple of weeks, I've got an idea of where I want it to go. So I normally know where I want to start, and I've got, you know, the first 3 or 4 chapters in my head, and then I just go. I don't have any more than that. I have one piece of paper that's got the days ruled off, normally 4 or 5 days, however long I'm going to base it over. And as things occur to me, I think, oh, that needs to happen day 3, and I'll jot a note, or that needs to happen right on the last day before we go to the, you know, the course. Write it there. And over time, this page starts to fill up. And that page, one sheet of paper, stays with me throughout the whole process. And I don't really do anything with it. I just add notes, arrows, sticks, asterisks, all kinds of, you know, little notes to myself.
That's brilliant. That's sort of plotting. So it's sort of plotting in process of writing. But I think it's really important because that's one of the things about crime, isn't it? It's making sure you get things happening at the right time, and that the foreshadowing's in there, and that those, I can see those little asterisks and those little notes are really important to make sure that
also, and this is for people who want to, you know, write a crime book or any kind of book. Don't ever be put off by that, the technical or the pacing or anything, because I always say first draft is my sandbox.
Yeah.
I can do whatever I want in first draft. If I want to bring aliens into chapter 37, I can. It's my first draft.
Yeah.
On second draft, I've got to take them out again. But while I'm writing the story, if aliens fit, I'm going to put them in. You know, and I always think first draft is purely for me. It's my time. And
find the story.
Yeah, and things like pacing, foreshadowing, leaving clues, misdirection, that can all be done afterwards. You know, once you've got the story or a story, you can do nothing without it. So you've got to have your first draft. And that's what I would say to people. Don't ever be put off by any technicalities of it. Start writing the story and see where it takes you. Let that happen and see if you just surprise yourself. But I don't edit as I go. I just write and write and write and write. And,
brilliant advice.
You know, I leave myself notes, and it's really good because I leave myself notes saying, this is absolutely abysmal. What would
delete this later? I've got to delete this later on someone.
Sort out on draft 2. But I love the way I leave my notes telling myself it's awful, like I'm not going to know when I come to read it. It's awful. Do I need to leave myself a note? You know,
it's probably not awful. That's just that bit of that awful bit of the subconscious mind that always tells you it's terrible, and actually it's okay.
Yeah. Rather than get caught up by it and get stuck and think I need to resolve this.
Worry about it.
Later, draft 2, and just keep going and keep going and keep going. That's what I do, but you know, that helps the creative in me to just keep going. I'll worry about that on, you know, second, third draft, not now.
I think that's absolutely pure gold advice, because it's that you can't shape the words until they're on the page and you know what the story is.
And it can be intimidating and daunting to get those words on the page if you think you've got to bear all these things in mind at the outset, and you really don't.
Yeah, because to execute a book that's going to sell like yours does and have fans who are just hammering for it, there's an awful lot of moving pieces that need to go into that story to make it really work. And they're the bits, as you say, that you add in, the misdirection, all those things are coming. So that's coming for anybody who's listening. Just to repeat, second and third draft is where you do the mechanics, if you like. So the magic happens in the first draft, and then it's down to the sort of it's like building a motorbike, Angela. That's what it's like.
I always say that, you know, after draft 1, it becomes the business end of it. So the fun is in draft 1. After that, it's the business end. But draft 1 is to have fun and enjoy the process.
Excellent. No, it's such good advice. And then in terms of your writing each day, because obviously you're a full-time writer now, you have to be writing this number of books. How many words do you write a day? Like, do you have a set limit, or how's that structure?
No, because we've not got kids, we've got fur babies, and you know, we're very, very flexible. So it's a case of when it bites, and you know what I mean by the bite, Sam. When it bites, I write. If it's not working, I don't try and force it. I'll go off and do something else. So, you know, there's times we've stayed up till 4, 5 o'clock in the morning until I literally just cannot write anymore because and you know, it's just when it's bit. Julie always says, when the idea is bit with me or a scene is bit, the house could fall down around me and I just would not notice. True. It's absolutely true. So no excuse me, no set routine or anything. Sometimes my favourite writing time is in the morning. So if I can get a good section, I feel less guilty about going off and doing other things. But oftentimes, you know, when it's going dark and stuff, I'll come back to my writing room, maybe do a little bit more. So I suppose early mornings and later on in the evening, my favourite times to write.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely to hear, actually, because the way you approach your plotting and that unstructuredness, if you like, it's the same with your day. That's you, isn't it? That's the way. That's you at every level. It's just like,
one has to wonder how these books are getting written, don't you think?
You're doing it. It doesn't matter, does it? I think it's whatever works, really, isn't it? But it's, part of it is understanding what works for you, and I think that's really important for new writers, because there's so much advice out there. Write every day, and you need to do X number of words, and you have to write in the morning, and you have to, have your cup of tea and sit down. There's so much advice that actually finding out, understanding your own rhythm is it's left behind, and I think that it's wonderful to hear that that's your approach, because it's different.
When I first was able to write first time, I think I tried to follow guidelines on what other people were doing, having set times and set word counts and, set this. But of course, that had never worked for me. Working around full-time employment, I'd written when I had the chance.
Yeah.
And, some mornings I got up 3 hours early. When I was writing Silent Scream, I actually was going up 3 hours early to write before I went to work, and then coming back and going straight into, the dining room carrying on. Yeah. And so it was very piecemeal. So then trying to adapt myself to a proper writing routine, it just didn't feel right for me. So exactly what you're saying, we all have to find our own rhythm. There's no right or wrong way. And I also think that people are busy, families, friends, and we all know, I don't know if your family's the same, my family thinks that the books write themselves.
Yes I think everyone does with writers. Nobody thinks you actually do any work.
I've got one of those special computers that I just press on, and it sits there all day just happily typing away.
Not a real job, you see, Angela, is it?
And if you haven't got one of those, Sam, I recommend you get one. So, it's difficult, but I always say, even if you can find just half an hour, if you love writing, don't necessarily try and put aside blocks of 2-3 hours, because sometimes that is so impractical. Even half an hour, just to lose yourself in the love of words for half an hour, it can be, it just gives you, I think it can give your brain such a break from everything else. So when the kids have gone to bed, or there's nothing on the telly, get a pad out and a pencil and just scribble something down and just see how it makes you feel. I mean, we're biased. We know how it makes us feel, but I want everybody to feel that way.
Yeah,
I want everybody excited.
Lost in the story. No, it's so true. It's fascinating. We've had a couple of people on. We had Joan Harris on, who said that she literally only tries to write 300 words a day, and I just thought that was massively liberating, because that's like you. It's like you sit down when it suits. And then some Hazel Gaynor was saying she sits down for like 5 minutes to see if she can write, and she doesn't put any pressure on herself. And I think that's like you say, it's like, just sit down for half an hour and just give it a go, because it's the pressure we put on ourselves to try and perform actually has a negative. It's when you actually sat down and just let go and said, I want to write the voice that's in my head, that's when the magic really happened and Kim arrived on the page. So it's fascinating, really, really interesting. We were talking earlier about dialect, and obviously Kim comes from your part of the world, and so how do you deal with that? How do you get across her voice to the middle America, who those ladies who are living in, I don't even know what's in the middle of America, but those places? How do you communicate that sense of place? And
I kind of keep Kim pretty dialect free, because she has the most to say, surprisingly.
I wonder where she gets that from, Angela.
Surprisingly. But what I try and do is kind of like introduce it in other characters. Stacey will often, say the odd Black country word. She's Nigerian of descent, but has never stepped foot out of the Black country. She was born in Dudley. And so, she's got a bit of an accent, and just to use it in key characters, but not too much, because I ever thought a book of mine was going to be translated, right? Now I'm very defiant. It's like, what will the Croatians make of this sentence? So something you have to think about, and I think even for UK readers, it can be a bit jarring, and I think so. It's great to give it a taste and a flavour, but not to do it too much, because people want to read comfortably without having to say, what does that say?
Dictionary in the other hand. Exactly. Yeah, I think it's word order, isn't it? Because you tend to have what was the thing you said earlier? What was that phrase?
You are turned to Yoam, which then became yam yam, and that's why Black country people are now called yam yams. And it came from just that word, really. So
I find language really interesting and the way it's evolved in different places. We were talking about different accents in different places earlier on before we started, and I think it's really interesting because it is a way of communicating character too, isn't it? Because she's a product of the place, and so you want to get that across, but without bogging it down in massive dialect. It isn't trained plotting that you're writing. Yeah, it's so true. She comes across as really rich and warm and very much of her locality. So, and actually, sorry, just to go back again, because you mentioned there that originally you were writing thinking that people wanted to read about big cities and not where you live. But actually, again, that was letting it go and being true to your roots. Do you think you knowing the area so well really, I mean, obviously it comes through into the story, but that's a really important part of it?
It is because I can write about it with authority. I mean, I think it's in the second book, Evil Games, where I put a murder which is in an alleyway which was literally 20 yards from where I lived, and I know what it feels like to walk down that alleyway and the noises and the smells and everything else. So I think definitely it worked for me with being able to write with more conviction because of absolutely knowing the areas that I was writing about. But some areas, some places I changed the name of. In Lost Girls, there was a kidnapping of 2 young girls, so I changed the name from Hayden Hill Leisure Centre to Old Hill Leisure Centre because you don't want to anybody. There's some people that might happen. Do girls get kidnapped from the leisure centre? So try if there's any chance it might offend or damage any individual or business, then I mix it around, but still locally people would know the place that I was referring to. But I mean, I absolutely love writing about my local area. I really do.
That's wonderful, isn't it? And obviously that comes through because you're there the whole time. Where do the ideas come from for each plot? You were talking about you wanting to write. You have themes. I mean, do you have like a big notebook and or do you get them from the news, or is it where do the ideas actually? Because you need to have a lot to keep. You've got 10 more books to come, 12 more books to come. You've obviously got 13 done. How do you keep generating ideas? Are there loads there?
It's different. Like I say, it's different things that I want to write about, and they not necessarily subjects. With Lost Girls, I just suddenly had the idea of what if 2 girls went missing and the families, very very close families, were forced to enter into a bartering system, so to outbid each other for the life of their child. And that exactly it was a case of
that one.
And it was like, now I've thought of that, I really really have got to explore the psychology behind that and what would happen between these 2 families. And then literally Lost Girls remains my favorite book, and it's because on the page it was exactly what was in my head. It really didn't change as soon as the ideas started to come for it, and I was writing them down, and I think it's my longest book to date, so clearly I couldn't shut up on that one. I had a lot to say, and it just represents the exact picture that I had, and how the characters would move and develop, and what would happen between the couples, and what would happen with Kim and the tea. So that's the sort of like the truest reflection of an idea. So it can be subjects I'm interested in, or I just go thought of, what would happen if that, what would happen in that situation, and play dead. I really, really wanted to explore a body farm, but I had so many messages from people saying, is this really in the Black Country? I was like, no.
Think Quantico.
I'm in America, and that's where I based it on, but wouldn't it be cool if there was? And that's sort of like things, how it comes with just ideas I want to explore. I mean, it didn't happen till book 6, but a subject I wanted to explore for a few years was hate crimes, which I did in Dead Souls, and that remains probably the hardest book I ever had to research, because reading personal accounts of the cruelty, the hatred, that caused me to step away from the desk on more than one occasion. It was quite difficult, but it just made me more and more determined to write about it, however difficult it was. So, I suppose that's a few different places the ideas come from. Something I feel strongly about, something that interests me, or just an idea that, a psychological idea that I'd like to explore.
And do you start with the crime? Is that what you've got your idea, and then do you have the crime next, or what?
Then the crime comes in.
Then you just wind Kim up and off she goes.
Yeah, it's the idea, and then it's how I work that into a crime story. So it's using the idea. It's like with Killing Mind, that was about cults. It was like I could have written about the psychology of cults all day, but using it as a backdrop for a crime story. And that's where you have to start thinking, how can I do that? How can I use this subject that I find interesting, want to share, and have Kim, work it through a crime story as well. So, but again, that's an enjoyable part, because once you as well, Sam, once something clicks in your mind, it's like, oh, I've just filled that plot line.
Off you go. Yeah. I love the research, and I'm loving you can feel that coming through. You love that too. They're getting into these worlds that just you would not have access to, or you would, that are fascinating.
And I also find as well, you just have to be so careful with what you share. I mean, I personally am interested in graphology, and I did a course on it some years ago.
I am too.
Right. And I did a course on it, and my handwriting was analysed twice at different times, and both times was incredibly accurate. It was really, really strange.
Uncanny, isn't it?
And again, so that I brought that into Deadly Cry, and I thought, right, how can I bring graphology into it? Oh, I know, we'll have the killer communicate directly with Kim. Oh, how would Kim react if the killer? And that's what, she's never had that before. And so I was able to use that, but I think you have to be careful of not using too much, because you learn lots and lots of fascinating things. And I'd like to put it all in. And I always say, sometimes I've read a book, an entire, textbook, to use one sentence. But as long as it's the right sentence, that's okay. Me quoting the textbook over and over is not entertaining for anybody. So it's choosing what you've learned. If you could just splurge everything you've learned, the books would be 200,000, words long. So it's tempering what you've learned to what's necessary for the plot, and also what's interesting to the reader.
Yeah, you've nailed it there, and that's so important, I think, is that because you do discover all this fascinating stuff, but just because we think it's interesting doesn't mean everybody else does. And it's what's necessary for the plot. I mean, that is actually, because really, I think, you even if you use a lot of your research, it might only be 15% of what you do. I wrote an article actually the other day about, I did fascinating research about Hatton Garden and all the history of Hatton Garden. None of it went into the book, none of it, but it was very interesting. But you're so right.
I always think as well, that's in that situation, nothing's wasted, because that you never know when that might be used. It may not be used for this book, but you can venture to say that somewhere down the line, there's something that you learned, there's something that you retain there. You think, oh, that could work here. And I always think that nothing is wasted.
So true. So, that's, again, more gold advice, because that's it. And it might not be the thing in the shape that you found in the original instance. It evolves into something. Stephen King always talks about that collision of unrelated ideas, doesn't it? So sometimes you need that information, those unrelated ideas, to come together to form a story. This is absolutely fascinating. I could talk about it all day. Honestly, it's great. I'm going to just pop. Deadly Cry is the one that's out now, isn't it? Have I got that right? Yeah, good. I'm so glad you said that. Every time I do this, I think I've got the wrong, especially when there's so many. I'm thinking I haven't got the most recent one anyway. So that's Deadly Cry. Just give us a little recap on Deadly Cry, and then I think we'll go to questions, because I know there's loads.
Yeah, Deadly Cry is basically really crimes that are being committed that seem to be linked. The killer is trying to contact Kim, giving the impression that, he doesn't want to carry on. He doesn't want to do what he's doing. He wants to be stopped. And if only it was as simple as that, but it never is.
No, it's great. It's a great plot line. And do you know, I love your covers. I think the picture, because it's not often you see a picture of the but actually she really looks like her, doesn't she? She's really,
really, really surprised. I mean, famously before these new covers, there was the lady in the red coat, running towards a house, which, I don't know where the house was, but they weren't having a lot of luck. There was an awful lot of crime going on there.
All these women running away from things. We all have them.
So when the publisher said they wanted to sort of like change the covers, We were very excited, and both Julie and I, when we saw, the first one, which was for First Blood, the prequel to the entire series, when that was shown to us, it was like, oh yeah, she is so Kim Stone. And I do understand that, she's not everybody's idea of Kim Stone, but she's certainly very close to the picture in my head of
your head and mine. And she's to me, she's really relatable. There's something about it's hard to get a fate and get it right, isn't it? But I think I think that's the thing. One of the things I love about Bookouture is that they keep trying, don't they? And they'll change things and they to get it right, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. I am going to bring Simon in because he's going to be the master of our questions now. So give me 1 second, because I haven't been paying attention to any of the the questions, because I've been chatting. He'll be here in 1 second. Hopefully he's been paying attention. There we go, Mr. Trewin. Oh, with no sound. Can you hear us? I have to plug himself in. Oh, it might be. Hang on. I've got him muted. It's my fault. Oh no, we both did at the same time. Stay there. Don't do anything. There. Right now.
Yeah, well, I've been paying attention, and
sorry.
I think what comes across, Angela, is your, that story at the beginning about how many years you tried to get published. I think that really shows that if you want to be an author, you've just got to have a real sense of dogged determination, haven't you?
Yeah.
And not give up. And I think that it seems to me like even now you've got the same energy and enthusiasm for what you do as when you were unpublished. And I think that's that's fantastic. And the questions and responses have been brilliant. Awesome. I'm going to ask you quickly about a black country. Is Wazzock a black country word or not?
I don't think so.
No, it's not. Okay, well, we'll take that question off. That's fine.
Not one I particularly recognise.
No, okay. There'll be a few non sequiturs here, but let's. Do you find that the fact you have a 12-book deal is that a pressure?
No, because we started off with a 4-book deal that then went to 8 books, that then went to 6 million, and the fact that currently writing book 14 at the moment, it's just flown by, and the ideas still keep coming. The subject I want to explore keep coming. So now I don't. There will always be a subject that we want to explore. So as long as people want to keep reading about Kim Stone, I'm happy to keep writing about her, because she's fun, and I never know what she's going to do. So.
Okay, well, that's an interesting question then. I suspect you absolutely know what she's going to do, don't you?
Not always. No, sometimes, as I was saying to Sam, sometimes I like to put her in situations to actually see what she might do, put an old foe against her, or, a nemesis, or, present her with an issue with her mother, just to see how she reacts, because I don't necessarily know what she'll do, in some situations anyway.
Have you written any books without Kim in? Unpublished ones in the past. Did you write without Kim?
Yeah. Two of them are published now by Bookouture.
Okay.
And these were earlier books that did the rounds and, were rejected. They're sort of like women's fiction, but sort of like hard women's fiction. The first book I ever wrote was about 2 women from very different social backgrounds, both with addiction to alcohol, and it was about a bond that forged between the 2 of them purely through their shared addiction, and that's called The Forgotten Woman. And then another one was about 3 sisters that grew up with a physically abusive mother, and what happened to them in later life, excuse me, as a result of the abuse. So they're not what you call easy reading, but
they're not fluffy.
And someone like Ian Fleming, most of his books feature James Bond. Can you, as long as you are writing, you're going to see the world through the eyes of Kim Stone, or do you think you may move away at some point?
I think I'd never say never, but at the moment I've still got so much to say through these characters, because there's Kim, but there's also the side characters. They sometimes they feature more in the books, any one of them, and each one of those is getting quite their audience now. And I'll have emails and messages where people say Stacey's my favourite character, please don't ever let anything happen to Stacey, and God forbid I ever let anything happen to Barney the dog. He will be
Oh God, no.
the dog.
Yeah.
I've had death threats over Barney, so trust me, Barney's safe.
Right.
Can't vouch for the others, but Barney's definitely safe.
I love that spiderweb idea of the fact that you've got other characters who are getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and who continue. It's a bit like Arne Dahl has that sort of murder club's the wrong word, his murder squad, where he's got, I think, 10 different characters, and he writes books focusing on different. And I think that's what will give you the longevity, because Kim will always be there, but bringing in those other characters is what makes her behave in different ways.
And again, it's great for me to actually explore those, because where they started off as side characters to enhance Kim and bring a different quality out of her as a character, they now exist in their own right. And we're learning more about each one of them, every book. I mean, for example, Bryant, how on earth he puts up with Kim, I'll never know, but bless him, he deserves a knighthood. But so exploring these characters, and there are also other characters that we bring in and out of the stories over time. We've got a Macedonian archaeologist, forensic archaeologist, who mispronounces everybody's name just because it's funny, and that kind of thing. And certain stories you think, that character would be great to bring back. In Deadly Cry, we brought back Alison the behaviourist. She hates the word profiler, and so in books where you need a real psychological input, she's great to bring back as a character as well. And all of these side characters bring out a different part or a different trait in Kim, and that's what's enjoyable for me. See how she's going to respond to them, spiky or not. So normally spiky.
Wow.
Do you have a kind of encyclopedic knowledge of all of the books you've written so far, or do you have to go back and remind yourself about, I had a scene a bit like that in book 3 and I need to do something different?
I have an absolutely brilliant partner, Julia, who will say, I'm sure you've done that before, or something.
Brilliant.
And in addition to that, we have a fabulous copy editor who's been working on the books from day one. So she's also caught some great ones. She'll say, hang on, Kim's Golf was 10 years old 4 years ago. I was like, oh yeah, good point. yeah, forgot that. So yeah, it's a joint effort to try and keep that continuity.
Because I know it's certain, if you get anything wrong and it slips through the net, your fans are going to let you know, aren't they?
Oh, they sure do. They sure do. But fair play. I mean, if it's justified, just accept it, pass it on to, my editor, and she gets it sorted. So, but that's great, that if people are into the stories that much, that they know these things, fantastic. Never ever going to tire of people just saying, by the way, you just made a bit of an error here. It's like, I'll go to that, It's nicer if they do it privately by message, of course, rather than, all over Twitter.
Publicly, yeah.
Either way.
I mean, given the fact Book of Chore publish in a slightly different way to other publishers, and they don't have the kind of lead time, they can publish they can publish fast and they can get books out. It sounds to me like you're kind of writing constantly, are you? I mean, you haven't got that kind of book a year. I mean, they publish as many as they can get you to write.
I do 2 a year.
Yeah.
And Julie's always said to me, and she's quite right, if I did 1 a year, I would be getting myself into all kinds of trouble, because I would have way too much time on my hands.
Yeah.
And we know what the devil does with idle hands, don't we? So
Absolutely.
Two books a year works fabulously. It's a great schedule for me to work to. Julie's heavily involved in the books as well.
Okay.
I'm writing book 14 at the moment. Julie's typing it. The minute she's finished typing it, I'll be printing off and she'll be reading it. My editor, Claire, doesn't want the book until Julie's gone through it with her red pen. And, for all these years, she has absolutely been my encouragement, but she's also my harshest critic, and she will say, what's this? Who wrote this? I know you can do better than that. And I'm not going to lie, she's made me cry, but she's right. And I've gone back and thought, I wasn't there for that scene. She's right, there's no emotion there at all. And so she does make me go back. She'll say she's brutal. I'm not going to lie. She can be brutal. But by the same token, you know, she's my biggest champion as well. So it works well. It works very well.
You said something there that you write them, then Julie types them up. Do you write in longhand?
I do, yes, with pencils and notepaper. Always have. And I've tried to change it and it just doesn't work. I just stare at an empty screen. There's something about having the pencil in my hand, scratching across the notepaper that connects to the creativity. And it may be a longer form of doing it, but with having Julie type, by the time I finished writing the first draft, Julie started typing that. So I'm ready to go straight to second draft because she's already sort of like 30, 40 chapters ahead. And that's what I mean, we're a total team effort. So I can go straight on to the second draft. But yeah, I have to write the first draft by hand.
You don't find it's too slow? I mean, the actual process of writing, does that sometimes you almost got this bottleneck of ideas?
Sometimes my hand, I only write on one side of the page.
Okay.
The hand side I leave blank, and that's for exactly that reason, Simon. Because as I'm writing, sometimes the thoughts are too fast for the hand.
That's what I thought.
So pop out to that one and leave myself a note of another point that I want to explore or something else that's just come to me, so that I don't forget it. But yeah, so that's how I do it. Is I leave myself a note. For another thought that came to me, but you know, the brain's ahead and the hand is trying to catch up, and that's why when it bites, you're aware of nothing else because that's all you're trying to do is keep up.
And how many weeks do you spend on the first draft?
That's the biggest portion of the time. I mean, when a book goes off to Bookature, for the first sort of like couple of months, you know, you're working on that with the structural edits and, you know, then the line edits and then the proofreading, all the stages. In between that, I've normally started the next book.
Wow.
Because it's sort of like 4 months from when I send it off to it being published. So during that 4 months, it's a mixture of working on the old book, but also starting on the new book. And then once the proofreading's been done, the focus is totally on the new book. So writing the book, first draft is probably 4 to 4.5 months, maybe 5. And then the rest of the process is about a month or 6 weeks.
Wow. And are you finding that you are getting that your first drafts of the book are getting better and better each time you write a new book? Because, you know, it's a bit like being an athlete, isn't it? I mean, your muscles have more and more muscle memory. You kind of know what you're good at and what you're less good at, don't you? So maybe you work a bit harder.
I think with me, if I've got the one I'm writing on at the moment, Julie will testify to because she's typing it and she says like this never ends. If I've got a lot to say on a subject, then I find that it flows quite well, and you know. Some first drafts have come out at sort of like 55,000 words, and I've been absolutely terrified. Like, oh my goodness, you know, how on earth is this ever going to be a full book? But the one I've been working on, the one I'm working on now, it's like you couldn't shut me up. So, and I can still think of more chapters that I want to put in, even though officially first draft is finished. You know, it's not over till the fat lady sings. So, you know, those chapters will go in. So yeah, I think I probably don't think about it. Julie's my first reference of how it's gone. I'm writing what I'm writing. And Julie will say, you know, this is flowing really, really well. And she's got a bit of a test. She tried to write without reading because she's going to be doing the reading afterwards. So she doesn't want. So she's trying to type without reading. But if she gets where she's actually typing, but she can't help but read, that's a win. That's a win. We've got her attention then. So she's like, oh, I have to read this bit. Yeah, cool. Happy with that.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
Are you able to switch off at all, or are you in the evening? You and Julie are still talking about what you wrote and she typed, or do you just?
Yeah. They always. I mean, we've been testing out things to do with crime scenes at ridiculous times of night. I mean, just a while ago, we were trying to see, we were in the conservatory, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. We just had this idea about how fingerprints would, you know, be on a glass panel. So there we were, putting butter on our thumbs and just, you know, doing that on the glass to see exactly what detail would, if you got put. And it's just ridiculous kinds of things. We were trying to work out once if a certain size shotgun you'd be able to shoot yourself. So we were there with pieces of wood trying to shoot ourselves with these pieces of wood as though they were shotguns, just to see if it could be done. So yeah, as you can see, the research we do is incredibly mature and grown up.
So, goodness knows what your neighbours think. What are they up to now, you know?
They're under our patio, so it doesn't matter.
So I've got a great question here then.
Research.
Do you think you could carry out the perfect crime? Do you think you could get away with that?
No, I really, really couldn't, because I am so clumsy and so disorganised, as you can tell by my planning process for the books. I wouldn't leave
It seems to be working, doesn't it?
Yeah, at a crime scene, I wouldn't leave a hair or some DNA. I'd probably drop my driving licence or the gas bill.
Brilliant.
So, you know,
Brilliant.
if find me within 10 minutes, I'd be like, yeah, I done it. It was me. So, you know.
My goodness me, this is just fantastic, Angela. I think this is one of the best hours we've ever had.
Yeah,
no.
I've just looked at my watch and I thought that was an hour. I mean, we could keep going
on. I tell you.
Are you writing this afternoon, or have you written this morning? What's your...
I'll be honest, it depends whether Julie makes me. I mean, it is Friday afternoon after all. She's standing here shaking her head. I don't think I'm getting the afternoon off.
No, well, you've got to keep her busy. Well, look, I want to thank you for your generosity, giving up an hour of your time. Also, I'm not alone here, but I think everyone just loves your spirit and your energy, and you know, the fact you can laugh about all of this as well. It's brilliant, and I think your story is really inspirational. So thank you very much for that.
No, thank you for having me. I still do pinch myself every day. Every day, I'm thankful for the fact all I ever wanted to do was write stories for a living, and the fact that I get to do that every day, it's never going to get old. I'm never going to get complacent, and I'm never going to take it for granted. I wanted it for way too long, so you know, it's
brilliant.
Every day.
That is a great way to conclude the hour. Thank you, and thank you, Sam, for brilliant questions, and everybody. 4 million books. Come on, everybody go and buy them. Make that 5 million by Christmas.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just a success story. Thank you so much, Angela. So I am going to sign off. You just stay right there, and I'm going to end the broadcast for everybody. So thanks very much for joining us from all over the world, with people from Nova Scotia, close here from Nova Scotia, all over the place. And it's lovely to have them. So we'll sign off now, but we'll see everybody next week, and we'll stay talking to you just for 1 more minute, Angela. We'll let you go that easily.